So here's one of the oldest questions in all of philosophy. Is mathematics discovered or is it invented? Today, we're going to tackle that, but through a really cool lens. The Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a snake eating its own tail. And honestly, it's the perfect metaphor for math, a system that's both infinitely creative and yet completely, totally self-contained.
All right, let's just jump right into that big question. For centuries, this is where everyone draws a line in the sand. Are we basically cosmic explorers, uncovering this hidden reality of numbers and shapes that's already out there? Or are we more like architects, inventing all these concepts from scratch, just using the raw material of our own minds? The Ouroboros theory kicks off with this really powerful idea. You have to think of math as its own complete universe of logic. I mean, think about it. You can't use outside evidence to prove a theorem, right? Its truth comes entirely from its own internal rulebook and axioms, those foundational ideas we just have to accept as true. It's this self-validating, endlessly looping system where, nothing escapes. Now, to really wrap your head around this, you've got to stop seeing mathematics as just a dusty old collection of facts. It's not static. It's a dynamic process. It's this cosmic loop that holds both the things being studied and the very act of studying them. Okay, so right at the heart of this mathematical serpent, there's this tension that drives everything forward. It's a clash between two ancient philosophical ideas that have, basically been at war for thousands of years. On one side, you've got what we'll call its static nature. This is the classic Platonic view, that numbers and shapes and functions, they all exist in some abstract, timeless world, just kind of hanging out, waiting for us to find them. They're unchanging truths. But on the other side, you've got the dynamic nature. This is the intuitionist view that says, no, math is a mental construction. It's an activity we do, building concepts piece by piece. But here is the big twist, the absolute genius of this Ouroboros idea. It argues this whole conflict, it isn't real. Discovered versus invented is a false choice. They are actually two halves of the same cycle. The dynamic process of our invention is just how we explore the static landscape of logical discoveries. You simply can't have one without the other. And this whole framework, it's not just some abstract philosophical game. It gives us a completely new way to understand the numbers we use every single day. Let's take a look at the secret roles they're playing. Let's start with 0. It's so much more than a placeholder for nothing. It's the hidden scaffolding of geometry, that origin point from which we measure everything else. And it's a total paradox, an absence that is also a presence. The problem of dividing by 0 is so tricky, so profound, that wrestling with it is what gave birth to the entirety of calculus. Then you've got the number 1. It's the ultimate autonomous unit. The locus of initiation, you could say. It's like the first domino. In formal logic, every other natural number is just generated from this single, self-contained idea. It's the very definition of unity. And if you want the perfect poster child for this whole duality, look no further than pi. It has a static, unchanging, rock-solid definition, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. That is what it is. It will never change. But it also has this dynamic nature, the endless, non-repeating process of trying to actually calculate it, a journey that literally has no end. And finally, we have the imaginary number I. This thing was born from a paradox that seemed totally impossible. What's the square root of -1? But from that little chaotic seed, a whole new mathematical reality just emerged out of nowhere, the complex plane. A structure way, way bigger and more powerful than the problem that created it. Now, that creative power of paradox that we saw with the number I, it isn't always so neat and tidy. In the early 20th century, a series of paradoxes started popping up that were so deep, so fundamental, they threatened to bring the entire temple of mathematics crashing right down. First, non-Euclidean geometries came along and proved that, parallel lines could actually meet, which shattered a certainty that had stood for 2,000 years. Then things got even weirder with Cantor's work, which revealed there isn't just one infinity, but a whole paradoxical ladder of different-sized infinities. But the real knockout punch came in 1901 with Russell's paradox. It's a total brain twister. Imagine a town barber who shaves all men who do not shave themselves. So, who shaves the barber? It sounds like a silly riddle, right? But that seemingly simple question completely blew up the foundations of set theory, which was the very language of modern math. This crisis, this cascade of problems, led to a shocking and undeniable conclusion. one that just seemed to break the fundamental promise of mathematics. And that conclusion was math itself was incomplete.
This is where the legendary Kurt Gödel steps onto the stage. See, he didn't just have a hunch that math was incomplete, he proved it. His first theorem showed that in any logical system that's powerful enough to do basic arithmetic, there will always be true statements that are impossible to prove within that system.
So here's the bottom line. That grand dream, the goal of mathematicians like David Hilbert to put all of math on one single, perfect, provably consistent foundation, it was over. Gödel proved it was mathematically impossible. But here's the thing. This wasn't a failure. It was a profound discovery that the map of mathematics could never be finished because the territory itself was infinite. But this crisis wasn't an ending. Far from it. It was a revelation. It forced mathematicians to ask a much deeper question about the ultimate purpose of what they were even doing. I mean, if you can't build a single perfect skyscraper of truth, then what are you building? What is the whole point of all of this? The response was a total game changer. Instead of focusing on the individual bricks, the numbers and sets that led to all those paradoxes, mathematicians started focusing on the architectural plans. This philosophy, called structuralism, led to a new kind of language, category theory. You can think of it like a grand blueprint, a universal translator that shows how totally different fields like algebra and geometry are really just different reflections of the same deep structures.
And this big shift leads us to the ultimate mystery, which was beautifully put by the physicist Eugene Wigner. Why is it that these abstract structures we invent in our heads, these games of pure logic, why are they so unreasonably effective at describing the physical universe? It really is, as he said, a miracle we don't understand. And that, right there, that is the serpent's radiant chomp. It's the moment the serpent's head, our abstract invented math, bites its own tail, the physical universe it describes so perfectly. The loop is complete. So the theory's final conclusion is just breathtaking. The reason our self-contained loop of mathematics so perfectly describes the universe is because the universe itself is a self-contained loop. Mathematics isn't just some language we use to talk about reality, it might just be the very structure of reality. Which leaves us with one last absolutely staggering thought. If math is the universe's own internal logic, its own recursive process of self-reflection, does that mean the cosmos is, in some way, thinking? And is the language of that thought mathematics?